Hey, yo, what's up, YouTube, man? It's your boy, Action Jackson, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about these trade targets that I believe that the Dallas Cowboys should look to upgrade and should go after to try and help out this offense. Do I seriously think that the Dallas Cowboys will go after any of these guys? No, but I do think that I'm making this video more as a thinking piece, more of something that Cowboy fans should look to do and should think about going into the offseason starting next month, because I believe that this offseason we should be looking to build around our quarterback anyway, like how all the other teams do in the league, and build around your star wide receiver and Ceedee Lamb. So that's why it makes your first year head coach's life a lot easier, and it helps out your team because we understand that you're looking at a league that you need to have at least 3 to 4 viable, in a perfect situation, 5 options, right? But you need at least 3 to 4 options that you feel very comfortable in down to crunch time in the playoffs. You see it year in and year out. And I'm going to talk about these players that the Dallas Cowboys should trade for. So before we hop into the video, I would appreciate if you guys would like the video, subscribe if you're new, comment, and share my video with anyone who you think will enjoy my content. I don't understand why you blame me. Tell me as I am, I don't understand why you blame me. Tell me as I am, tell me as I am. Straight into it. The Dallas Cowboys can get these trades done. I believe winning is all about the ownership. If depending on how bad your team wants to win, it does depend on your coaches and your players. But for them to set the necessary pieces, I do believe that it largely takes place in the front office. I believe that you do need to partake in some smart, valuable trades. I do think that you need to take the draft very seriously and draft best player available per round. And I do believe that you also, once you are drafting these players, that you're bringing them in and that you're developing them correctly. And then I also believe that, you need to partake in free agency. If you don't do anything in free agency, or you don't try to bolster any of your needs that you have in free agency, I think you're having a big problem. And I think that's where most of our problems lies, because we're not doing anything in free agency to bolster any sort of position group. Like, I would feel a lot more comfortable if we did things in free agency, like bolstering up our defensive tackle room, if we added in real veteran type like dudes to bring in and help out the defensive line group, whether it's edge, whether it's D-tackle, or if the Dallas Cowboys never feel comfortable in drafting a safety, why don't you spend a pick that you think you would normally spend on a safety that you would draft, that you highly tout or highly scouted in the draft. Let's say, for example, Minkah Fitzpatrick. If you wanted to get a first-round pick for him because you feel like that's a really great safety, but you just suck at safety, the Miami Dolphins did their part picking out a really great safety out of Bama, and then you could trade your first-round pick to go get a guy like him, for example, right? The Dallas Cowboys would to sign a free agent safety because they felt like, hey, we don't really do well drafting safeties, let's just sign one. I would feel a lot more comfortable in the discussion that I'm talking about in terms of trading, right? Because how many times have the Dallas Cowboys really traded for a top-end wide receiver? Amari Cooper in 2018, but that was a desperation move because the year prior, Philly won a Super Bowl, and we were looking very mediocre at that time, so we decided to trade our first-round pick for a wide receiver, but often we don't do too many things like that. This offseason, or just this season in general, seasons prior, right? We always felt that we got worse at wide receiver when we traded away Amari Cooper. We got rid of Amari Cooper because of the Joneses gave away Amari Cooper because of political reasons, right? Because of whether or not he wanted to get a vaccine, whatever the case might be, but they wanted to get rid of him for stupid reasons, and we decided to get worse at wide receiver 2 on purpose. So, and the Dallas Cowboys knew they did that. They did that wrong when we went to San Francisco. We had less weapons, and we couldn't take it to the Niners because we finally had a defense that was very capable, I believe, of winning the game. We just couldn't score enough points, and the Cowboys knew that, and that's why they went out there and traded for Brandon Cooks. We didn't get the full Brandon Cook experience that we really wanted. It is what it is, but what were you really going to get from a 30-year-old wide receiver? Late 20s, early 30s wide receiver? What did you really think you were going to get from that? His speed was gone and things of that nature, right? It was fine, but I felt the Dallas Cowboys at that time were trying to win and trying to vastly improve their wide receiver too. But I felt that they also should have drafted a wide receiver and added young talent as well, outside of spending just a 3rd-round pick on Jalen Tolbert. And then any other time that you upgraded at wide receiver was 7th round pick Jalen Brooks, or Noah Brown was 7th round pick, whatever the case might be, right? So I felt that right now, if the Dallas Cowboys were to trade for somebody, these are guys that I'm about to list are guys that I heard that were up for trade. Just speculation. My number one player that I would love the Dallas Cowboys to trade for, if they were to do it, is Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is speculated to want out of New York. It's reported by either Adam Schefter, Tom Pelissero. It was reported this right around that last game, that Jacksonville Jaguars game, when the Jacksonville Jaguars and Jets played. That was a game that Devontae Adams went off in. That was one of the games, and there was a couple of games later in that season when Garrett Wilson wasn't getting targeted enough. He felt that if he was getting targeted, they would win a lot of more games, and people were speculating that he wants out of New York because he wants to play for a team that's gonna give him the targets like some of his other Ohio State teammates like Chris Olave or Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle, or Terry McLaurin, somebody they look up to probably out in Ohio State with Washington, playing with a really good quarterback. So I think Garrett Wilson is one of those players that wants to play for either a really good quarterback, or two, a really good team. Realistically, where can he go? I would think Buffalo, but I heard Buffalo's not going to be big spenders in free agency, but I think Buffalo will be a really nice destination spot for a guy like Garrett Wilson. Baltimore, of course. Chiefs are always in play. I will never rule out anything that the Chiefs do from a talent acquisition standpoint. But, if you look inside the conference, I think Detroit could possibly do something. I think Green Bay could possibly do something. That's pretty much it from that I can think of. Maybe Tampa, but I don't think they do because they like Jalen McMillan that they drafted out of Washington. Again, I think that the Commanders can possibly do something. That's pretty much it from that side. Maybe the Niners if they want to get bold, or the Rams. But I feel like the Dallas Cowboys should look into this, and I would be willing to give up a first-round pick only if Ashton Genty, Mason Graham, Ted McMillan isn't on the board. If Garrett Wilson is still on the roster by the time the draft comes in April, and he's still on that team, the Dallas Cowboys really don't like anything that's there. They can't trade back because there's nobody that's wanting to trade up for a player. I would not be mad if the Dallas Cowboys were to trade their first-round pick to get a guy like Garrett Wilson, because he has 2 years left on his deal, which would be his 4th year, and then his 5th year option, that would be 2 years. And then Dallas Cowboys can try and get something done around that 2028 offseason. So that would still give him enough flexibility to get something done. Unless he wants, of course, Garrett Wilson wants to hold out his last year going into his 5th year. I could possibly see him doing something like that. But not saying I would fault him at all, but I would just say that, you would at least get 1 full year of Garrett Wilson. And I believe that if underneath the rookie contract, I would definitely give up a first-round pick, because I think that is somebody that you will end up having to pay anyway. And I think that is somebody that would vastly improve the second wide receiver spot. And this is a guy that you could play anywhere, on the slot, off the boundary, at the X. I think this is somebody that you put backside onto an opposite or a bunch side formation. I think this is a really good wide receiver. His rookie year, he had 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns. His longest catch of the year was 60 yards. And he won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Hell of a player, and that was with Zach Wilson and a circus at quarterback. Garrett Wilson was able to do that. His second year, 1,042 yards, and that was again with Zach Wilson in like 8 snaps, or like either 4 to 8 snaps of Aaron Rodgers. But you still had that sort of year with Zach Wilson as your quarterback. And then, backup quarterbacks as well. And then you had 1,100 yards in your 3rd year with Aaron Rodgers just wanting to play with his best friends and things of that nature. He caught 1,100 yards. He had 101 receptions. He had 7 touchdowns. His longest catch of the year was 42 yards. I just think that this is a really good wide receiver, and I think that the Dallas Cowboys should look into trading for him, because he would be a dynamic wide receiver, and we would desperately need a wide receiver like that. He's 24 years old. He will be turning 25 in July. I think this will be a really good wide receiver, and I think the Dallas Cowboys, if you're able to ship your first-round pick, or heck, if you're able to give up your 3rd-round pick, I would love that. If we give her a third round pick for a guy like him, I would absolutely love if the Jets are willing to part ways with Garrett Wilson. I don't think they want to. I think they're going to try to amend ways and try to keep him inside New York. I would, because, you know, you're bringing in a new head coach. You possibly might have a new quarterback. Even if you keep Aaron Rodgers, I still think highly of Aaron Rodgers. I still think that he's a really good quarterback. I just think that coming off an Achilles tear at that age is really tough, right? But anyway, I think Garrett Wilson should be viable option number one if it is made publicly known that he wants to get out of New York. I would definitely want to make that trade. Number two, DK Metcalf is another person that I would love the Dallas Cowboys to trade for. When Brian Schottenheimer was the offensive coordinator from 2018 to 2020, DK Metcalf was there from 2019 and 2020 during that tenure while Brian Schottenheimer was the offensive coordinator, and DK Metcalf got his name on the radar as a really top talented wide receiver when he was drafted by Seattle. But once he saw Russell Wilson giving him the ball in deep ball situations, having him use his big stature at 6'4", 235 pounds, he's able to run a 4.2, 4.3 40 at that size is ridiculous. And I think trading for the Dallas Cowboys, if you're able to get him, I would willingly give up a second round pick, because we miss on our second round picks 8 times out of 10. The only time that we hit on our second round picks has been Trayvon Diggs, which is right now not going to look too hot. But Trayvon Diggs' first 2 years was a hit. And then you had DeMarcus Lawrence, who was a 10-plus year vet. I still pray for Trayvon Diggs. I want Trayvon Diggs to come back and still be helped of a corner. But we don't know how really it's going to turn out. It's not looking too well because of the injuries. We don't know what Sam Williams is going to turn out. More than likely, people are already calling him a bust. Fine. And then Marshawn Neal, we don't know what he's going to be. That's still up in the air. But he has shown some promise. But we want to see more of the pass rush side. But I understand coming out of Western Michigan, he's more of a run-stop defensive end. So really, for me, I wouldn't mind, for example, if they're on the board, I wouldn't mind giving up Caleb Johnson for DK Metcalf and drafting possibly a Devin Neal or, a Scatterbo in the third round. I would not shy away from that at all if we were to give up a second round pick like Caleb Johnson or Amarian Hampton or Jack Besh or Savion Williams. Jack Besh, Savion Williams, both wide receivers out of TCU. Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa. Amarian Hampton, another great running back that people are comparing to DeMarco Murray out of UNC. You got Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle out of Ohio State. And then you got Deion Walker out of Kentucky, 6'7". But there's a lot of good players that are going to be available to you in the draft. But if you feel that if you're willing to give up and trade away from possibly those players for DK Metcalf, personally for me, I would do it just because DK Metcalf is already on a contract. You already have him for the next 2 years in a contract. Seattle will take the bulk of that contract, I would believe. If not, I don't mind taking that contract on, only because I feel that if you can restructure CeeDee Lamb's and Dak Prescott's contract, you can free up almost $60 million with the cap. You extend Micah Parsons, that creates $18 million in cap space, and I think you can make some things wiggle if you're able to give up a day 2 pick. I would love, in a perfect world, give up a third round pick, but if Seattle's asking price is a second round pick, I would love to give up a second round pick for a guy like DK Metcalf, who, if we just look at the past 3 years, like how we did for Garrett Wilson, 2022, 1,048 yards with 6 touchdowns. That was with Geno Smith. Geno Smith, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. And then, that was the year that DK Metcalf went crazy on us in that game the week after Thanksgiving. And then last year, he went for 992 yards and 5 touchdowns. The only reason why he didn't touch 1,000 was because he didn't get a lot of reputable targets at the back end of the year. And then also he missed he missed a game or two due to a knee injury, which wasn't too crazy. It was a sprained MCL. Thank God it wasn't crazy. He hurt himself versus Atlanta going up for a ball. He only missed like a few games, but it was nothing too crazy. But still, 900 yards. Again, 900 yards from DK, we needed that this year. And then you look at Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is a first-round pick, but he had 1,100 yards this year with him playing second fiddle next to Devontae Adams around week 7, week 8. So you look at that. That is crazy to see. And we need that type of value because we need another wide receiver that you cannot leave on an island. A wide receiver that you can't put the smallest defender on, or the type of guy that you feel that, okay, we'll put our second best corner play cloud coverage or have a safety help over Ceedee Lamb, put our best corner on our second best receiver, and then you shut down our wide receiver, because that's what happened with us when we played Green Bay. And every single time you hear about that Green Bay game and you hear defenders talk about it, they said as long as 88 didn't beat us, we were fine because we weren't scared of anybody else. When you hear things like that, and you heard about that really ever since you let go of Amari Cooper. When you let go of Amari Cooper, the deal was don't let 88 go off. Sometimes there were games that 88 still went off no matter, even the defense knew, okay, we're going to 88 regardless. But there's been too many games where 88 is getting taken out of the game and there's nothing else to help us really because we can't run the ball and we don't have anybody else to throw the ball to. Now, again, I'm still in part of the route. I want to help out this offense a lot. We already spent a lot of resources on the offensive line. I'm not against offensive line if we take one at 12. If that's the best player available, Genty isn't available there. One of the wide, if the Dallas Cowboys don't like one of the wide receivers, we like a lot of prospects that the Dallas Cowboys will not like. Come down to it when they interview these players, talk to these players, understand their demeanor. There's certain players that the Dallas Cowboys will not like, but there's going to be players that we love that the Cowboys might not necessarily like. So I think that we also have to get into that mindset that the Dallas Cowboys are not going to like everybody that we like. So we might like Luther Burden, wide receiver out of Missouri. We might love wide receiver Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. But will the Dallas Cowboys like them? I think it'll be hard for them not to, but I would not be surprised if one of their names are on the board and they still want to take an offensive lineman. I would not be surprised because they might say, hey, Josh Simmons, Dr. Cooper checked him out, medical's cleared up. He was clearly our offensive tackle 1. He was available to us at 12 and whatever, right? So, but I also would love to drop Genty if he's available round 1. If we give up one of our day 1 picks for a guy like Garrett Wilson and DK Metcalf, and we draft Scatterbo out of Arizona State, Caleb Johnson in the 2nd round out of Iowa, Amarian Hampton 2nd round out of UNC, Travion Henderson out of Ohio State 2nd or 3rd round. I would not be upset if the Dallas Cowboys do anything like that. And the last but not least, only because of the hot name, because Cooper Kupp announced on Twitter that, him and his camp and the Rams both agreed that they're going to be looking for finding ways to get him a trade partner. Where does Cooper Kupp go? Realistically, I think that he goes to the best suitor available. I think, again, Buffalo, they need more weapons. I think that they would be in the ballpark if they're willing to give up a day 3 pick. I don't know what the Rams are looking for, but if I'm anybody in the league, I'm not giving up anything more than a 4th round pick for a guy like Cooper Kupp, who's been hurt a lot for the past 2 years, and he isn't that guy from 2021. But he still is a wide receiver, too, that you don't want to sleep on, right? Because last year he had 710 yards, 6 touchdowns, averaged 10.6 yards a catch. The year he was injury-riddled, he played 12 games in 2023. He had 737 yards, 5 touchdowns. He only played 9 games in 2022. He had 812 yards and 6 touchdowns. That was the year after coming off that Triple Crown year, and he did that, that was crazy to see. But again, I think Cooper Kupp could play for the Detroit Lions. I think if, there's only, I believe, like only 2 or 3 years left on his contract. He's on a very friendly type of deal. The Rams did say that they are reported to take on a majority of the deal if they were to get rid of a guy like Cooper Kupp. So if he goes to a team like Detroit to pair up with Jared Goff, they had a partnership back in LA days. So I think they would really love that for that to happen. Make that happen out in Detroit. Washington's always in play because I think Washington, they need another weapon. They need more weapons to help out their rookie quarterback. I don't think they'll be scared to help out Jaden Daniels. And then can't rule out Philly. Philly is always going to be in the play to do something, which is crazy because everyone talks about salary cap, but there's no way that you pay a $50 million quarterback in Jalen Hurts, a $30 million wide receiver in A.J. Brown, and a $30 million wide receiver in Devontae Smith, and then you're paying Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, Saquon, Dallas Goedert. They're paying all of these guys reputable money, and they're still able to go out and go make moves. So I can see the Eagles doing it, Kansas City, Baltimore. Those are a few teams. Houston. I think Houston would be another place that would love to pick up a guy like Cooper Kupp to add to that building, because, you know, Tank Dell gets hurt a lot. They need a third wide receiver possibly to replace for Stephon Diggs that they might lose in free agency. They got Nico Collins, who's a hell of a wide receiver. They got Dalton Schultz, who's a solid tight end. But, yeah, that's about it for the video. Again, I think the Dallas Cowboys should trade for one of the 3 wide receivers, if either Garrett Wilson. Personally, for me, I would be willing to give up either a day 1 pick if there's nothing available that you like round 1. I would love to give up possibly a 2nd round pick at bare minimum for Garrett Wilson. If he is publicly announced that he does want to get out of New York, I would love the Dallas Cowboys to look at that. Publicly, if DK wants to get out of Seattle, I would love to give up a day 2 pick, whether round 2 or round 3. Mainly round 2, because we haven't really hit on our 2nd round picks. So why not give that pick up for a proven commodity, and that will help out your offense, right? And then last but not least, for Cooper Kupp, I would give up at least a 5th round pick. We have 3 5th round picks, majority of those in the compensatory round. I would love if we can give up one of our 5th round picks to the Rams to get a guy like Cooper Kupp, and we can figure out the money things later. But that would significantly be an upgrade to wide receiver 2, and I would still look to draft a wide receiver in the first 2 days, even if we were to trade for a guy like Cooper Kupp if he was on our team. So that's about it for the video. Hope you guys have a nice day. Stay safe, stay blessed. Bye.